I am regretting buying a house.
If we wanted to buy another home, our mortgage would triple.
I'm buying my first house. It's not as much house as I wanted, and it's more than I thought I would spend.
What you can qualify for and what you can comfortably afford is sometimes two different things.
What's going on, guys? JC Nita here, property owner, investor, and part-time dabbler in YouTube. And as you already know, the housing market is a mess.
I am regretting buying a house. My fiance and I have not even lived in it for a year. And we had to buy an AC unit already, which is thousands and thousands of dollars. Obviously necessary and worth it, but very unfortunate. We're also trying to plan a wedding, so that was not ideal for the budget. And then we had to add gutters. And then on top of that, we now probably have to replace our water heater. Just can't catch a break. And before anyone comes at me, we did have an inspection. None of it was flagged. So it's been a rough day. It's been a rough couple months.
Okay, really quickly, let's just itemize the expenses that her and her fiance have had to deal with in the last year, she says, since buying this house. Number one, replacing the HVAC system. According to Google, a quick search, it says that a new HVAC system can range from $5,000 to $12,500 to replace, with a system typically costing around $7,500 to replace. Second, she said that she had to replace her gutters. Now, again, according to Google, the average cost to replace gutters in the United States is around $2,300, with a typical range of $1,600 to $5,200. So if you're not already keep track for me, guys. Keep track for me and let me know where we're at so far. And third, she said that her and her fiance had to replace their hot water heater, which again, according to Mr. Google or Mrs. Google, says the average cost to replace a hot water heater is between $1,600 and $5,500, with the typical homeowner spending around $3,550. So I appreciate you doing the math for me, but I have it here myself, and what I've come to is $7,500 plus $2,300 plus $3,550, which is the average price for all three of those replacements, and the grand total comes to $13,350. So this highlights the importance of having reserves. Obviously, I don't know if they have reserves or not. She didn't mention it. I don't know what part of the US they live in, so these estimates could be super high, they could be super low, I don't know, but the main point is reserves are key. So if you don't already know, I'm in the process of, I shouldn't say I'm in the process, I'm getting ready to go into the process of buying another property to live in. And so, of course, I'm doing my research, and I've done this a couple times, so I know a couple things to look out for. Yeah, get a home inspection, which she did, so good for her. But I'm not sure how they missed the fact that the hot water heater and the HVAC system were probably on their last legs. Now, obviously, this is not foolproof, but this is something that a decent home inspector should be able to pick up on. I don't know what happened. They moved in within a year. They got hit with all these expenses. But again, the main thing is have reserves. For me personally, I won't give actual numbers, but I'm going to have at least 12.5% to 15% of the home purchase price in cash in reserves in a reserve account. Now, some people may not be able to do that, so I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to do, but I've been living at home with my parents for like the last, I don't know, 3 years, who knows how long it's been, since a little bit after COVID, just saving up cash for this. So that's my 2 cents.
You know, something that I struggle with as I get into like my later 30s, especially with the access of social media and seeing these influencers with big homes, perfect aesthetic. They don't have lamps that look like that. Is like, am I behind? Am I supposed to be doing something differently? Like when I bought my house in 2016, 17, I don't know, it was supposed to be my starter home. We were 27 years old when we bought it, and it was perfect for our little family. We had 2 little kids, and it was perfect at the time. But over the last 10 years, we have come to the realization that this is likely going to be our forever home. And it's a choice that we're making. Because if we wanted to buy another home, our mortgage would triple. And what kind of financially smart person would I be to take a perfectly good home, a perfectly good neighborhood, with perfectly good memories and perfectly good bones, with a perfectly good school district and perfectly good friends, and a payment that I know that I can make if my husband were to drop dead tomorrow on my own income, just because I feel like I need to, because that's what I see everybody else doing. Like, I see all these influencers with these huge homes, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But I've since decided to shift my thinking and just be grateful for the fact that I'm able to buy a home, because there are plenty of people my age or within my age like range that don't even have the ability to buy a home. They don't even have the ability to save money for a down payment because rent is so high. And I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. I think because it's shoved down our throats, seeing these few influencers spend so much money on skincare and things for their home and making it perfect and buying a bigger home and buying a really nice car. It's also okay just to live an average life and save money and like be content with that. And it took me a while to get here, but I'm here.
Okay, so I really, really hope that she does not sell her house because of trying to keep up with people that she sees on Instagram who most likely don't even own the properties they're in. It's probably rented, the car's probably rented, the house is probably rented, and there's nothing wrong with renting, but they're flexing on the gram and they're causing people like this person to feel like she's doing something wrong when really she's in a perfect position. She said she's in a house that is big enough for her family, check. She's in a house that's in a good school district, check. Around good friends, check. Good bones, which is amazing because we know these new build homes, a lot of times they're not built with the same quality that the older homes are built with. So she has she has good bones, check. Not to mention she has a 3.75% interest rate. 3.75% interest rate. For her to leave right now and get a new home that's probably going to be bigger with a higher interest rate is bonkers. That would be idiotic for her to do. And as she mentioned, she can comfortably afford it on one income. She doesn't need her husband's income to even afford the property. What does this all mean? If they really wanted to get busy, what they could do is this. They could take the combined income they have, cut back on their expenses if they already have. I don't know enough details, obviously, but pay off the mortgage as fast as possible. They have a low interest rate. And since they're living off of one income, they can use the other person's income, whatever's left of it, if there is anything left, to pay off the property faster. Once it's paid off, now they have no home expense. Obviously, the biggest expense any of us have is where we live. You cut that off, now you have a lot more money left over at the end of each month to go do other things, vacation, spend more time with your kids, do things that actually matter. So instead of trying to upscale your house to keep up with the Joneses, in this case, not even your neighbors, but people who live all across the world giving you FOMO or whatever it is because you're watching them on IG, instead you pay your house off and you get to do things that really matter to you, like traveling and creating experiences and living without the stress of having a bunch of debt and bills to pay for every month. She's in a great position, and I really hope that she doesn't blow it up because of IG. If I was her, I would blow up my phone. I would throw my phone in the trash, or at least delete IG, delete Facebook, delete whatever she's using, and just stay put. Because if I was in her position, I'd be ecstatic. I'm curious what some of the comments say about this. If they agree with me, if they don't agree, let's see. So someone says right off the top, comparison is a thief of joy. That's correct. This person says, stay, exclamation, exclamation, 4 exclamations. Big home here and I hate it. Too much to keep up. Just get you a new light fixture. That's hilarious. One of the things that she was complaining about is how her light fixture looks old. She said she has good bones. So after she pays her house off, again, I'm a big advocate of paying off your home. That's my goal when I buy my property. My next home is to pay it off completely so I have no mortgage at all. And it might take a while, but that's my goal because I think the freedom I feel and the lack of stress that'll come with not having that biggest bill that we all have will be hard to put a number to it. Like the feeling, because you know, a lot of people will say, why don't you arbitrage?
You can take the money that you're going to use to pay the house off and instead invest it in the stock market, and you might get a 10% return and your interest rate is 6%, so you can pocket that 4%.
No. Scratch all that. Pay the house off fast as possible, get rid of that expense, period. Then take that money that you now have that you were using to pay for the mortgage and all that interest and use it to upgrade your light fixture. Use it to change the paint. Use it to change the cabinets. Use it to update the bathrooms and update the bedrooms. Boom. Like living in a brand new house with great bones. So this person says, we have been in our starter home for almost 25 years. No mortgage for the last 18. The heck with the Joneses. Amen. I love it.
I'm buying my first house. It's not as much house as I wanted, and it's more than I thought I would spend. But I can afford it, technically. So, I'm going to film it. I'm scared shitless. And there's probably a lot of people that would feel the same way. We're going to get in there and we're going to fix as many things as we need to, and we're going to try to add some equity. I got a plan to add about 600 square feet onto it because it's just a tiny little bedroom, but you'll see it. I'll film it probably when we open the door for the first time. So, come along on the journey with me and tell me what I'm doing wrong and tell me what we're doing right. And, well, we'll see you soon.
Okay, so what he's doing wrong, I don't know, because I don't know enough information. He said technically he can afford it. I don't know what technically means here, so that's one thing. Another thing is he said it was less house than he expected, but more house than he expected. So I don't know about that either, but what I will say, what it seems like he's doing right is that he bought a fixer-upper is what it sounds like, or at least a home that has potential to expand. Boom, so there, right there, that's equity already, which he mentioned. So he's gonna go ahead and, I'm assuming here based upon what he was wearing, I mean, don't crucify me, that he's probably gonna do the work himself. So he's gonna save money on the expense, which is the biggest expense, which is the actual labor. So, hey, maybe you can take this small house that he purchased and make it a masterpiece. I think if more people could do that, that's the way to go. Get a house with good bones and gut it, or you don't have to gut it necessarily. You could buy a home that they call it like carpet and paint. You take the carpet up, put some new paint on it, change the cabinets out, good to go. As long as the plumbing's good, the electrical's good. Even the major systems, they're expensive, but they're not crazy expensive like if you had to fix the foundation. So the last house I bought, it was kind of a fixer-upper, and I'm not a handyman, so I took out a personal loan back in 2019 with like a 10% interest rate, which in retrospect seems reasonable compared to today's rates. And I used that to fix up some things that needed to be fixed around the house, moved into it during COVID, and then moved out of it and rented it out. And now I'm in my parents' house, so great to be me.
Many millennials regret buying homes. This is why it's important for you to run your numbers so that you don't end up house poor. Let me show you what I mean. What you can qualify for and what you can comfortably afford is sometimes two different things. So if you make $100,000, the typical debt to income ratio a lender is going to use when qualifying you is about 40%. That gives you $40,000 divided by 12 months, gives you a monthly allowance of $3,333 if you have no debt. So you could buy probably around a $400,000 house. Your payment would be around $3,300 and you would just qualify and you'd be celebrating. But the next step you must take with your family is, what is your take-home pay? If you make $100,000, your take-home pay is around what? $6,200? If your house payment without utilities or anything is $3,300, that is 53% of your net pay. This is where you're creeping into the house poor area and you don't want to be there. But I understand your frustration because you're like, hey, I make $100,000. How can I find anything for under 400,000? Because back in the day, the financially responsible thing to do was to have your house payment be about 30% of your net. But if that were true for someone making $100K today, they would have to buy a $240,000 home, which doesn't really exist in most places. So I understand your frustration. But when you sit down with your lender, also sit down with your family, talk with your lender, and look at your net pay so that you don't end up house poor and you can actually enjoy the home you're purchasing.
I'll be honest, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is the fact that lenders use gross pay when they calculate the debt to income ratio. I always thought that was moronic to take gross pay, because obviously you don't take home that money. Part of that money goes to Uncle Sam, your favorite uncle. Then as he was speaking, it dawned on me. The reason that the mortgage companies probably take into account gross income instead of net is because they know if they took into account net, no one could afford the house. The debt to income ratio wouldn't work because most people, as he mentioned, would be way past that 40% mark that they use, which is unfortunate. Obviously, home prices have increased a lot in the last, 4 or 5 years. But still, even 5 years ago, it was probably the same thing. If they had used a net income, it wouldn't work. I am curious as to why they use gross. I really am, because to me, it just doesn't make any sense. But long story short, he brings up a great point. Whenever you're trying to determine how much home you can actually afford, you have to take into account the net. You have to take into account the money that actually hits your pocket, not the money that you are never going to see, because again, it goes to your favorite Uncle Sammy. So I think this was great. I think it's scary because if you really do base it off your net, you're probably going to think, I'll never be able to afford a home. I kind of feel that way myself sometimes too. And I make a decent income. Trust me, I make a decent income. And even with that being said, I look at my net and I'm like, man, I look at the home prices around me. The median home price in my area is somewhere around that $400,000 mark. I think it's like 379-ish. So it's tough. And again, that doesn't take into account utilities. And that's if you're completely debt free. Now, full disclosure, personally, I am completely debt free outside of the rental properties that I do own, which I don't count them as personal debt because they're business debt. So I'm in the situation he's talking about, someone who has no debt and who makes around, let's say around $100,000 a year with around these home prices we're looking at. And sometimes I get nervous, like will I ever be able to afford a home? And this is not a woe is me type of thing. I'm just making sure I can relate to you all because I know you all probably in the same boat that I'm in. So it's like, I don't know, it's tough out here now. But long story short, net income. Net income. Don't let these lenders push you into buying a home that you really can't afford based off your gross. They're going to play on your emotions and get you, oh, this is the biggest investment you're ever going to make. An investment puts money into your pocket. It does not take money out of your pocket. Shout out to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read it, read it. And now I'm done preaching at you. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for sticking around with me. If you made it this far, feel free to give the video a like. And if you feel so inclined to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And it helps out with the YouTube algorithm. And until next time, speak to you all later and make good money decisions.